welcome to Two Boomer Women. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. I've been talking with Boomer women for almost a decade now. Well, I guess I've been talking to Boomer women all my adult life. Reinventing myself several times along the way, though, but always focused on us, Boomer women. With this incarnation of Two Boomer Women, I'll be interviewing other women who have a message of interest for our demographic. If you want to hear about or learn about something specific, let me know and I'll find someone who understands us to talk about it. There's a contact page at twoboomerwomen.com. If you want to be a guest on Two Boomer Women, bring it on. There's an application form at the website too. Finally, this show is all about conversation. We women know its value. We know how to do it, and we must perpetuate the art form. So let's get started with today's show. Welcome to the Two Boomer Women podcast. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. December 29th. The end of the year is right around the corner, and what a year it's been. A full year of pandemic, and we've all learned parts of the Greek alphabet. And here at Two Boomer Women, I've been blessed with such amazing, interesting, smart guests, and I'm going to review the guests in this final episode. I'll also mention the air dates for each guest, so you can find the interviews of interest by either scrolling back where you're listening now, or you can go over to the website, twoboomerwomen.com. Find the guests there. Wherever you find the guests, there will be a link to their website too, so you can learn more. My first three guests this year are all dear friends who agreed to chat with me to get my first year of flying solo going. They aren't the only friends who joined me on air. And as I review the guest list, I'm truly blessed to have such a circle of amazing people in my life. Interestingly, some of my close circle are people I've never spent time with in real life. I met them online as we pursued our business interests, and thanks to the power of technology, we've become good friends, close friends. Anyway, before I get all soppy on you, let's get started. January 27th, 2021. Judith Pratt Jeffries. I was in a business group and put a call out for an accountability partner. They're so valuable in many different ways, and Judith responded. Another Canadian boomer woman. Perfect. And then I got to know her, and I was awestruck. In a nutshell, she had spent just enough frigid winters in the cold white north and decided to change her life. She planned it out, she tested the plan, and then she made her move. She's now happily immersed in life in the Dominican Republic and does not regret her decision for even a second. She shared her journey in a book and is now coaching other people to create the life they want. None of us are getting any younger, so we shouldn't be putting our lives on hold any longer. February 3rd was my dear friend Robin Defoe. A senior herself, she is caregiver for her dementing mother. I had several guests this year who talked of elder caregiving, but Robin truly is in the trenches. She talks also of her own experiences with the use of CBD oil in helping her with her mother, and of the impressive power of the immune system booster she markets. I think we can all agree our immune systems can use all the help we can give them these days. My friend Michelle was next, on February 10th. She was my first accountability partner in this online business world, and that worked so well that we will be lifelong friends. And not a week goes by, even 10 years along now, that we don't FaceTime each other, catching up, supporting each other, bouncing ideas around, and, well, bitching when bitching is needed. Michelle isn't a boomer, but I found it interesting how all the life choices we boomer women made are also part of younger women's lives. Great careers when the children came along, then having to make hard choices about leaving the workforce because the money wasn't enough to justify the expenses nor the heartache of having other people raise your children. Basically trading one workplace for another, but no regrets even when the money is tight. February 17th was a really interesting one from a woman's point of view. Nahani Ackroyd is a financial advisor. Canadian, so some of her advice isn't actionable for all listeners, but she gives us great strategy for finding a financial advisor, how there are no wrong answers really. Info is info, and wisdom helps us all. The following week, I flew solo as a follow-up to Nahani because several years ago I created a personal financial spreadsheet. I call it an income-outgone analyzer, and I give it away free because too many women I know approach retirement with too little knowledge of what their financial situation post-retirement is. The first 2 weeks of March, the 3rd and the 10th, my guest was Marnie Clark. Marnie has over 20 years' experience in natural medicine, and when she received a breast cancer diagnosis in 2004-05, she was proactive about her health and now coaches other women facing the diagnosis or wanting to avoid it. Our interview is called 24 Ways to Decrease Your Cancer Risk. It was such good information, it took 2 weeks to bring it to you properly. It was well received, as Marnie's 2 interviews were the most listened to episodes of 2021. March 17th and April 7th were sort of mostly the same person. I met Glenna Majot in this online space several years ago, but we have met. As it turns out, she lives across town from me. I interviewed Glenna first as Maggie Tom, the pen name she uses for her gripping suspense novels. Her books are not a genre I would normally choose, but I bought one so I could sound intelligent interviewing her. Well, I couldn't put it down. In this episode, Maggie talks about her writing process, how she keeps a story twisting and turning, leaving readers thinking they know what's coming next, and then plot twist. On April 7th, Glenna discusses how to capture story. We start out talking about recording the lives of our elders, but we're boomers. We've had some adventures of our own, lived through some interesting times. It's time to start chronicling our own lives. We had some interesting insights as we chatted in this episode. March 24th and 31st belong to Phyllis Chubb. Phyllis is a Jyotish astrologer who has had a truly interesting path through life. Unfortunately, the sound quality of these 2 episodes is not up to par, but they're well worth the listen as Phyllis shares insights and philosophy with us. To help those of us less well-versed in the Vedic, Phyllis writes novels to help us see meaning and understand the possible narrowness of our worldviews. Kathleen Kanasowicz came to us via Phyllis. Kathleen is a mandala healing art facilitator, and on April 28th, she explained mandalas, our affinity for them, and the healing ability of these sacred circles. Michelle returned on May 5th at my request as her child was finding her way into teendom as a trans youth. Michelle is smart, insightful, and fully vested in every aspect of her children's development. In our weekly chats, none of my naive questions were left unanswered, and I had lots as my grandson was only a year or 2 younger, and, well, you never know. None of us ever know what's around the corner, and these subjects are so life-defining that I think we should all be prepared for the what-ifs of life, and this one is huge. Penny Stevens is one of my oldest friends. I mean, we're the same age. But she and her husband bought their home from me and my former husband over 30 years ago, and we've been friends for all that time. On May 12th, we were deep into the pandemic. Penny and her husband live here on Vancouver Island with 1 daughter nearby. Penny's entire family, elderly mother and 3 siblings, live in Britain, as does her other daughter. Penny shares her experiences with us as her situation is not unusual. She gives some tips, and we invite your tips as well. Janae Bauer was my guest on May 19th. She's an inspirational speaker and the founder of Inspired You School. As well as sharing her Inspired You blueprint with us, she encourages us to be our best selves as we begin to wrap up our 9-to-5s and design our signature legacy in retirement. What can I say about the May 26th episode? Have you ever heard of laughter yoga? I hadn't, but fortunately I'd met Linda Leclaire online, and she shared its history and her path to becoming the original laughter yoga master trainer in Canada. Needless to say, we shared many laughs through this episode. Many of us could use more laughter these days, so have a listen. May 31st was an episode of note for Two Boomer Women, the very first monthly man day. I was originally calling them Manly Monday, but men proved to be hard to get on podcasts, so I adopted the name suggested by my 3rd Manly Monday guest. My guest for the first Manly Monday episode was John Orion, a man with a plethora of credentials on his CV. And now that he's 8 years into rejuvenation, that's his name for retirement, he inspires, trains, and supports retirees to truly savor life by creating their own fun and meaningful ventures. My next guest stayed with me for 3 episodes, the 9th of June and then the 23rd and 30th of June. Durga Mata comes from a farming and Quaker background. She married a Bengali and discovered a global identity which embraces thought and wisdom from every corner of the globe. She's been practicing meditation for over 40 years, a student of Sri Chinmoy, who gave her her name. She also shares the arts of silk painting, pipe and tabor playing, and forest bathing. On June 16th, my guest was Sheila Finkelstein. Sheila is an 81-year-old, and I think I just saw recently that she celebrated her 82nd, who supports boomers and seniors in having fun while learning how to thrive in the age of technology. Many people, when looking at their computers, their smartphones, or tablets, feel overwhelmed and out of touch about how to navigate in what feels like foreign territory, and the need to learn a whole new language. Sheila's goal is that we older folk find the path of technology to be an easy and exciting journey, and we never need to feel isolated. Monday, the 28th of June, was my second male guest. Bob Levin and I have been online friends for several years, and he's one of the brightest people I know when it comes to online security. He's an original in the world of computers, and he's pretty opinionated about computer security, password management, data backup, and cloud storage. I've learned such valuable lessons from Bob that I was thrilled when he agreed to come on podcast. Susan Farling, my guest on July 7th, is another local woman I had to go online to meet. As well as living across town from each other now, it turns out we also grew up in neighboring tiny towns on Vancouver Island. What are the chances? Susan had an impressive career in counseling and psychotherapy private practice, and now specializes in retirement and third stage of life coaching. Fran Petrie is a woman I met a bunch of years ago in a business coaching group we were both part of. We'd mostly lost touch over the years, but her endeavors have periodically appeared in my Facebook feed. Fran's not a boomer, but I think she's a great role model for any of us. You remember those dreams you had all those years ago? Those dreams that drifted onto the back burner and then slid off the stove without us even noticing? Well, let Fran inspire you. Apparently raising 3 sets of twins, running a home, having 2 careers wasn't enough for this woman because her former life as the singer in the band wouldn't stop itching her. In this episode, Fran talks about how she put a former dream back on the stove and, well, she cranked the heat. My third male guest is the originator of the term Monthly Man Day. Keenan Fiddler is by far the youngest of my guests this past year, but when I asked a few health questions of him at a local grocery store, he was so knowledgeable and helpful that I immediately asked him to be a guest. He's a holistic nutritionist who helps his clients optimize their diet and, consequently, their health. I took a bit of a break mid-summer, replaying several episodes from the beginning of the year. I kicked back into gear on August 11th with Leanne Lecrau. I had followed her story online as she found herself in a toxic workplace, weighed her options, discussed them with her husband, and finally made the decision to quit. She explored several options after quitting, then decided to embrace retirement. Leanne advocates for an unbusy retirement, one that's all about being rather than constantly doing, and finding joy in the flexibility and freedom of living life on our own terms. That episode was a launch pad for several episodes exploring options for midlife women who aren't happy at their 9-to-5. On August 18th, Marina Drulich discussed transitioning from employee to entrepreneur. She helps her clients create their entrepreneurial identity and the focus, motivation, and flow needed in their new world. Kathleen Wolf was next on August 25th. Kathleen's professional career was pretty impressive. Then she decided to strike out on her own. She developed the Experience Ecosystem, a proven framework to guide clients to recentering around their purpose and building meaningful growth based on their strengths. In this episode, Kathleen discusses strengths and weaknesses and the value of being prepared and what that entails. On September 1st, I got on my soapbox again. There was an election coming in Canada, and I do like to rant. I introduced Grey Ruckus, so if you're a Canadian with an opinion, perhaps you'd be interested in joining us. September 15th, we circle back around to boomers who might be interested in leaving the 9-to-5. Sharon Dyer discusses freelancing. There's so many options these days, but the trick is to get noticed. Sharon helps you discern between risks and chances. She coaches you through change and opportunity. She helps you see the rewards that come with courage. Finally, with Sharon, you'll create the profile that does get noticed. On September 22nd, I went places I never thought I'd go. Style. I call myself a wash and wear kind of person these days, but Susan Cox shares tips, ideas, and thoughts with us, whether we're bemoaning what age is doing to our body, or maybe you're ready to spruce up the old you, or wondering about color as you age, or, okay, I'll admit it, like me, you miss those fabulous heels you used to wear. The last episode of September was another first at Two Boomer Women. In the fall, I joined a podcast guest search platform, and on the 29th, I interviewed my first guest found there. Regina Andler discusses life topics and scenarios we can all identify with and gives us valuable tips for dealing with them. Does the art of saying no or how to be okay when things are not okay sound valuable? Better listen. On October 6th, my guest was Wendy Tatiucci. Wendy found herself a care decider for her mother when she was only 37. 9 years in, she's taken all her experiences and everything she's learned to help other people prepare and shorten their learning curve when it comes time to care decide for a loved one. October 13th's guest was one of those 1 in a million guests. Speaker, consultant, advanced degrees in both music and psychology, opera singer, senior beauty pageant winner, and an insurance advisor, too. Well, that's just a piece of her CV. Former President Jimmy Carter called her a force that is an inspiration. And Gail Hamilton is exactly that, a force and an inspiration. You see, Gail has been blind since childhood. And after listening to this episode, when you think blind, you'll never think disability again. Brenda Florida was my guest on October 20th. Many women, especially us boomers, are raised to believe that life is to be lived in service to others, that others' needs will come before our own. Brenda's sandbox metaphor really helps us understand where personal power does and doesn't lie. People-pleasing. How many of us are guilty of that? Brenda is a reformed people-pleaser who now liberates others to their authentic power and unique self-expression. David Frost was my guest for Monthly Man Day on October 27th. He calls himself the Kaboomer coach. I love that. As he encourages mid-age and older people to be well past 40. His physical bank metaphor will help you understand what you need to do as you age. His Stamina90 will give you natural anti-aging tips. Dave has strong views about polypharmaceuticals and about the value of movement. He's got great information and actionable advice. On November 3rd, Nancy Poland shared her experiences in caregiving. Her father had Lewy body dementia, and in this episode she talks about the man he was and the person he became. If you're caregiving a loved one with dementia, the path ahead of you is a windy one, with its highs and lows. The rewards are both great and, sometimes seemingly non-existent. Nancy's story reassures you the trials, the emotions you're experiencing are not unusual. Madonna Hanna was my guest on November 10th. If this interview wasn't so much fun, I would have been exhausted by the end. That's the energy level of this woman. Thick skin, yes, air quotes, and resilience were the gifts this woman of color took from a childhood of bullying. On numerous occasions, Madonna took the high road because to respond or react would only sink her to the same level as her antagonists. She led by example both in the East Coast fashion business and as a teacher on the West Coast. In midlife, Madonna added athlete, widowhood, and acting to her repertoire. November 17th guest was Shelley Johnson. She loved her high-powered career, until she didn't. In this episode, Shelley explains mental fitness and positive intelligence, how her clients come to her for help with their professional lives and how that overflows into their personal lives. If you're in a toxic workplace or overlooked for the promotions you deserve or feeling called to make a bigger impact, you'll appreciate this episode. November 24th was my final Monthly Man Day for the year. Joe Kashyani had a long professional career as a psychologist with older adults facing decline and loss. He now puts all that knowledge and insight together to help guide us boomers into our older years. He also discusses successful aging and reminds us what there is to celebrate about getting older. While not all of us will become centenarians, Joe's Living to 100 Club will help you turn aging on its head. And that brings us full circle to December. The 1st, to be exact. Leslie Kasanoff spent her life in healthcare, including 25 years as a holistic chiropractor on the Central Coast of California, and 10 years before that as a medical laboratory scientist. Recently, she's combined her science geek side and her alternative care practitioner side to help women through health coaching and consulting. Weight loss, hormone issues, chronic health issues. Great discussion as we entered the month of indulging our waistlines, socializing instead of exercising, and contemplating what we want to do better in the new year. My interview on December 8th was a powerful one. Louisa Hex is the North American coordinator for the traveling photographic exhibition The F Word, Stories of Forgiveness. It's a program of the Forgiveness Project, a London, UK-based nonprofit. She serves on the Charter for Compassion's global team and is the lead organizer for the restorative justice sector. In this episode, Louisa discusses forgiveness, how complicated a subject it is, and its potential in our life. She touches on the subject of self-forgiveness, curiosity, and empathy, and shares stories of forgiveness that are really powerful. Great food for thought as we consider our hopes for a new year. December 15th was my last guest of the year. Carol Clegg helps women like us figure out a digital business and then make it happen. Possibly something we've thought about as COVID lingers and resurfaces when you least want it to. Carol discusses a boomer-style digital nomad life, digital time savers, and thought and life organizers. We geeked out a bit at the end of this episode, but stay tuned in. We might mention something that'll interest you. What a great year it's been. I hope you do go back and check out any episodes of interest. Or, it's the holidays. Binge listen. You know, the subtitle of this podcast is The Fine Art of Conversation. And like any conversation, some have run their course in 20 minutes. Some run well into an hour. Some run for 2 or 3 episodes. And like most conversations, there's story. All my guests have stories. That's just part of what I love hosting these interviews. The stories alone make the interviews worth listening to. Thank you so much for tuning in this year. I hope you've clicked on the follow or subscribe button. There's some great guests coming in the new year. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave stars. It helps us grow and it improves our ranking on the podcast platforms. And sharing an interview you enjoyed is fabulous, and thank you. Leave your comments on any episode. I appreciate your thoughts. twoboomerwomen.com is our website, and there's a tab there called Join the Conversation if you want to leave your comments there. I'm always looking for guests. If you have a topic of interest for boomer women, if you have a story or a lesson to share, I'd love to hear from you. If you think your story isn't of interest, well, go listen to Glenna Maggio's interview and then contact me. If you know someone who's inspired you, send them to the website and insist they fill out the application. No topic is off limits if it's applicable. No opinion is nullified if it's delivered respectfully and not derisive of any group of people. Thanks again for letting me be a part of your life this year. I wish you a peaceful new year, good health, and enough prosperity to make ends meet. Be kind, stay positive, good health. And I'll see you next year.